Journalist Sana Saeed on House Resolution 1449 condemning the global rise of anti-Semitism. Once again, we are not in favor of any sort of hatred or any of that. We don't stand for that. But what does this bill really do? What does it really mean?
Core of this hysteria, at the core of this manufacturing of anti-Semitism on campuses, is who is defining anti-Semitism and how it's being defined.
How?
In 2005, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance published a working definition of anti-Semitism. And while the definition itself doesn't mention Israel, among the 11 examples of anti-Semitism it does give, 7 include Israel. The ERA definition of anti-Semitism, which is vague, conflates Israel and its actions with Jewish people, a conflation that's been criticized as not only dangerous for the safety of Jews, but also as suppressing any and all criticism of Israel.
That's
Compare
the problem
this definition
right
to
there.
the one set out in the Jerusalem Declaration
It is not.
in 2021. While
It is not anti-Semitic to criticize Israel or its military or any of that. And this type of legislation is trying to make that happen where you can't criticize. So if you're all for free speech, you should be with me on this.
While it also received criticism for erasing the Palestinian experience, the Jerusalem Declaration not only provides a clear, concise definition, but it also explicitly states that anti-Zionism and support for Palestinian freedom between the river and the sea are not anti-Semitic. In other words,
That's insane.
there's not just one definition out there for anti-Semitism, but it's the ERA definition that is used by pro-Israel advocacy groups, the State Department, and this year, in the midst of anti-genocide protests across the United States, the House adopted the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which
Yikes.
mandates that the Department of Education adopt the ERA definition. And the way this really, by the way, shows up in media coverage and national discourse on anti-Semitism on campuses is through the language of categorization, specifically the delineation made between Jewish students and pro-Palestinian students. It's a very cynical use of language.
Yep.
First, it makes the default position of Jewish students, and thus all Jews, to be pro-Israel and pro-genocide. We see Jewish identity explicitly weaponized in service of, again, a genocide overseen by a country that claims to represent all Jews. But this is, of course, demonstrably false, especially when we see how Jewish Americans have also been at the forefront of protesting against this genocide, including on campuses. Pro-Palestinian as a categorization is an umbrella term that includes Arabs, Muslims, Christians, Black Americans, Jews, LGBTQIA, and all the ways these intersect. But when pitted against Jewish students or just Jews, it's made threatening because of how Palestinians and the fight for their liberation is manufactured in American and Zionist narratives as anti-Semitic, wanting the destruction of Jews. The categorization of Jewish students, like we see in news coverage, like we see in congressional hearings, takes away the vested politics part of the campaign to discuss anti-Semitism on campuses, the stifling of any and all critique of Israel, and distracting from the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Meaning, the Jewish students being paraded in the media as concerned for their safety aren't simply just Jewish students. They're pro-Israel students. But calling them pro-Israel students would immediately, one, imply that there are anti-Israel Jewish students, which goes against the mainstream pro-Israel framings, and two, undermine the manufactured accusation of anti-Semitism against anti-genocide, anti-apartheid activists. Because once you start saying, what about the Jewish students who are advocating against the genocide of Palestinians? The tropes of Jewish student fears and Jewish student safety on campuses collapse. Because Jewish students are not having a monolithic experience on their campuses. In fact, for many Jewish students across American campuses, the greatest threats to their safety have been their administrations and pro-Israel groups and students. But that's not the narrative that pro-Israel groups want, nor the one news organizations care to report on. And while there is nothing objectively threatening about the term pro-Palestinian, it has been rendered into a latent threat when it's been used as it's been used in this country. The pro-Palestinian banner stretches far and wide, but at the forefront have been Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims. Much like Israel itself, this country too requires anti-Arab, anti-Muslim bigotry to uphold the political status quo. And so, not recognizing that Arab, Palestinian, Muslim students are facing threats to their safety from every level of American society
Yep.
is a purposeful and calculated neglect in defense of support for the genocide of Palestinians.
Yikes. I will link this video as well as the full video because this is simply just an excerpt from one of her episodes. So I'll link that in the description so you have full context here. Thank you for watching. Take care. Be safe. We'll see you on the next one.